Welcome to yet another episode of Connect, where we go beyond Sunday. This is an interactive session where we integrate the Word of God with the normal life issues. And today, again with us, we have our speaker for today, Linus Oyugi. Thank you once again for joining us today. When you see both of us, it's in issues to do with mental health. Yeah. We care more about your mental health and our mental health, and that's why we are here today. Yeah. But again, to spread forward or beyond the last discussion on autism. Linus, it's very interesting to let you know that a number of people have reached out after our last episode, and so we have a few things to really clarify before we move on to our next session. And that means people are following. It makes me happy to see that as Christians, we are able to get to interact with these issues of life, which guides us on each and every other day life. And the first question that came in, or rather what people were very happy about the last session, is the fact that even in our churches, our church platform, we had you mention that sometimes you get referrals from pastors, believers. And again, sometimes you, as a clinical psychologist, you have that time where you refer people to even go to church and try and find out the spiritual nourishment. So what we can get from these the sessions that we had is that it is a two-way, two-way kind of an interaction where, yes, we need to seek prayers, we need to serve God, but again, we also need to be active on issues to do with our own health and finding out what is really disturbing us. But again, something came out from our viewers or listeners from the last session, and one was about obsessive compulsive disorder. And one of our listeners was trying to inquire from us, does it mean because I sometimes feel like I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, the OCD, does it mean that I'm autistic?
Okay, thank you very much for, that's a good question. First of all, I'd like to go back to what I said in the previous discussion, is that we cannot self-diagnose with a mental disorder. I'm hoping that that the person that asked the question was diagnosed officially by a qualified mental health care provider. But basically, to answer the question, OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, and autism disorder, autism spectrum disorder, are two very, very different conditions. And I'll explain what I mean by that. OCD is a condition of obsessions and compulsions. People that have OCD have got intrusive thoughts that are very disturbing. For example, people may have intrusive thoughts of contamination. They may feel that they're dirty, so they may wash their hands like 5,000 times a day. Some people may have an intrusive thought that they're in danger, so they may keep checking the door, they may keep checking the lock. And this is so severe that it interferes with the normal functioning. So they have an obsession, but because they have the obsession, they're trying to use activities which we call rituals or what we call compulsions to try and get rid of these thoughts. So they develop compulsions or rituals like washing their hands, checking the door. Some people are very, very obsessed with symmetry. They like things organized in a very, very specific way. If you change any thing on their table, they'll notice, and that will be a source of distress. So it's a condition of obsessions, intrusive thoughts that make you very, very anxious, followed by compulsions. These are activities that you engage in order to try and get rid of the thought. Autism, we talked about one of the feature of autism as restricted repetitive behavior, that children and adults with autism may engage in certain activities and behaviors or continuously over and over again, not because they have obsessions, but because they're autistic people are just creatures of habit. They're not doing it because they're anxious. They're doing it because their brain is wired differently in such a way whereby they struggle very, very, very much with uncertainty. They like it. They're more at ease or calm when they know what to expect. So it's not really an anxious situation.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Thank you. you can have both conditions at the same time, which we call comorbid, where a person can have autism and they can also have obsessive compulsive disorder. And you can be diagnosed with two conditions and they're treated concurrently as well. But you can also have either autism or obsessive compulsive disorder individually as an individual diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for mentioning that. So, Linus, again, as we dive into the topic, there has been quite a number of beliefs about the causes of autism, and we call them the myths, where we have the society believing that it's either from the ancestral spirit, you didn't respect the elders, you were cursed. But again, when we come to the spiritual part, the biggest belief might be maybe this person is not 100% born again. They do not know how to pray. They have not been praying. They have not been tithing. So bringing to your attention, what do you think people are saying out there about the causes of autism?
Yeah, indeed, there's a lot of myths surrounding mental health in general, not just autism, but specifically to do with autism. I've heard a few. Myths are dangerous in that they can stand in the way of somebody receiving treatment.
Sure.
If you believe that you are conditioned, your mental disorder is due to demon possession or a bad spirit or a curse, then getting help from a psychologist will be difficult for you because you believe that you have a spiritual problem. The question is, how can a physical solution like taking medication solve a spiritual problem? That's
Sure.
a problem that most people would have. But some of the most common myths that I've heard about autism is some people believe that autism used to be rare, but now it's very common. Why? Because statistics is actually showing that there's more people nowadays in the world of today receiving a diagnosis for autism or any other neurodevelopmental condition like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder than ever. But the question is why? Is it that what we're exposed to, is it the social media that is making people more ill? Is it that the world is more stressful? But I think the answer to that, we already talked about it in the last conversation, is that I believe that since there's more information out there and information is for free, people are actually learning about their symptoms on social media, through other people talking of their lived experience, and then they realize that they also have a problem and they reach out. So nowadays, people are more open to receiving treatment. So it's a myth in that. I don't think it's more common. It's just that it's more diagnosed because we have more psychiatrists and we have more information out there for free. The second myth about autism that you hear quite commonly is that people who have autism lack empathy, that they do not have empathy. We've talked about the symptoms of autism, like they struggle when it comes to social interaction. They struggle to reach social cues, and they may be misunderstood by people in the society. So the problem is not that they lack empathy. The problem is that they struggle to understand empathy. They struggle to read empathy, and they also struggle to show empathy. They have a lot of empathy. Actually, autistic people can have a lot of empathy, but they struggle to actually show the empathy. Some people believe that if you have autism, that for a child or an individual that has autism, that the goal of the clinician or the therapist or the goal of treatment should be to make them to make them like other people, to correct a problem and make them look like other people.
Very true.
To make them connect like other people. But look at it in this way. People that have neurodevelopmental conditions like autism and ADHD, we call them neurodivergents. Basically, this means that their brains are wired differently. They're basically born with a different brain. So there's not any amount of therapy or medication that can change the wiring of their brain. They're born like that. They've got some disabilities, some very difficulties that they have in day-to-day living, but they also have got very, very good strengths that they can use to their advantages. So the goal of treatment is not to correct a problem, because some psychologists actually believe that neurodivergents don't have a problem. The goal for treatment for these people is to help them live their best neurodivergent selves as possible, not to correct a problem, because they've got a brain that is wired differently, and there's nothing wrong with having a different wired brain. Yeah.
And I think that takes me to the other conversation that we had earlier when we were having a break and just discussing a few issues, picking up today's session. And we mentioned an issue to do with people who are autistic, and the issue to do with intelligence. That some of them are very bright, and that we even have teachers who are autistic to a certain level. We even have doctors who can be autistic, but to a certain level. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, indeed, conditions like autism and ADHD have been associated with intelligence. There have been correlation studies linking those two, that people who have these conditions tend to also be of high intellectual capability. But although we've done correlational studies to show that linkage, there's not enough causation studies out there that shows the nature of the relationship. So we don't know actually why and what really is causing this. But specifically, autism is associated with a syndrome that we call the savant syndrome, where autistic people tend to have to be very, very gifted in specific areas. Some people believe that it's because due to their what we call the repetitive constricted behavior, because they develop very, very strong interest. So a good example would be a child that has developed an interest in biology or chemistry may start reading biology from as early as 3 years. So over time, they may develop a very, very good knowledge in biology and medicine, and they may make very, very good doctors. So it could be that the symptom of autism makes it more likely that they will specialize in one area and they become a master of one area. Unlike other children who are jacks of all trades, they do all sorts of things. But autistic children tend to do one thing, just one thing, and they do it over and over again and become a master of it.
Yeah. I think I have also observed that. Going back to the discussion, you mentioned about parents who have autistic children would want them to live a normal life like the other kids. If it is the sleeping pattern, they want them to do the same. But again, thinking about the treatment we give to these kids, do they have a special kind of a treatment that we should give towards them, and then maybe leave the other kids whom we feel they're very normal? That's how we say it.
Yeah. That's also a good question. Like we've already said or spoken, is that the goal is not to correct a problem, because the problem that exists is not a problem that can be solved through therapy or medication. It's a different wired brain. So the goal is to create an environment where they can thrive with, with their differences. So it's not to correct anything. So treatment for children and individuals that have autism is tailor-made specific to their needs. There's no one size fits all when it comes to autism. Even for two children that have got autism, the treatment plan is going to be completely different for both of them.
Wow.
Yeah, because you are working with a specific child, identifying what their needs, and then responding to their needs by structuring a treatment plan that best fits them. And that best solves the problems that they have.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Every other parent's belief and faith and action is towards complete recovery, complete treatment. Do we have any treatment that is geared towards autism?
Unfortunately, there is no cure for autism, just like many mental disorders. We're not going to give you like a medicine and we tell you that this is a silver bullet, that this will take away your problems. So you take just one pill and it takes away so there's no cure as of today, according to the science of today. But with proper diagnosis, proper treatment and management, people with autism can navigate through life without much difficulty. So even though we don't have a cure, there's very, very many ways of specifically behavioral, and sometimes autistic people who have autism can be given medication, not for autism, but to help because we talked about it being comorbid with other conditions, like, for example, 70% of people who have autism may also have ADHD, which can be managed through medication. They may also have anxiety-related issues or mood-related issues that can be treated with medication to help alleviate the symptoms that make life difficult for them, and they're able to live a healthier and more meaningful life.
So also speaking on behalf of parents, relatives and friends who are struggling with this disorder, and talking about the burden, because sometimes we feel like they are a burden to us. I can't go anywhere, I can't take my child to a certain place because people will stare at that person, and you cannot prevent people from staring. So we can't even take these young ones or even these people, the autistic now population, to a larger congregation. And so we feel it is a burden. To what extent has this burden people? And again, on top of that, I have also observed that when you have an autistic child, the burden mostly goes to one gender. It's like it's the mother who should take care of that child. And sometimes men are left out of that circle. So
indeed, traditionally, because women, especially in the traditional African society, women have been the caregivers. They've been the homekeepers. But the world is changing. We have a lot more women in the job industry today, women who are working and also trying to balance work and home.
Sure.
So indeed, when it comes to talking with parents who have children with autism, we've got to rope in both the parents, the father and the mother, because they both need to be supported. Indeed, like as you mentioned, it could be a burden because it's not easy taking care of a neurodivergent child. They've got very specific needs. They've got emotional dysregulation that you've got to deal with almost on a daily basis. Sometimes treatment for them is quite expensive. The schools or the education system that you have to take them through is specialized, and it can also be quite expensive. And the overall process of taking care of them can be extremely stressful for the caregivers. So it's important that the caregiver is also given attention, and they can receive their own care through support groups. There's a lot of support groups for parents with neurodivergent children in Kenya. And basically also them attending therapy can be crucial in ensuring that they're also healthy and in the best position to support their neurodivergent child.
So what you mean is that even the parent who is taking care of this child has been greatly affected. And they need to go for therapy.
It's not unusual for any caregiver or any parent taking care of a person with a psychological condition to go through their own kind of stress. There's an aspect that we call vicarious trauma, where you can develop trauma, you can develop symptoms of trauma due to dealing with a person who's mentally ill. So that in itself can be an extremely stressful situation, and oftentimes people forget to look after themselves, and they're the caregivers, and they are at high risk of suffering vicarious trauma.
Okay. So, and wow, this is very informative. Because I used to maybe think it's only the children or the people who are affected, but now it's drawing to us as parents who have to be with these children and our relatives every now and then. But I still find out that we don't open up to introduce them even to our visitors when they come home. We don't want to go places with them. And sometimes you need to look for somebody who knows how to take good care of them for you to be able to live home as a parent. But again, what message are we giving to these parents about this special person in their lives?
You do not have to hide them. There's treatment available through behavioral training. Children with autism can be helped cope with life. They can be helped to learn how to navigate through life with other neurotypical children. I understand that a lot of parents are suffering stigma, but what they need to know is that the treatment is available. They just need to reach out, and the children can be well.
Wow. That is a message that we are getting to hear from Linus today. Interesting enough, I'd love to encourage us just to read a verse from the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. And the Bible says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I'll boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." And today, to our listeners and to people who are following us, because I know they're listening and they're trying to learn from this, the people who are just sitting down and listening to us, we just want to assure the believers and the Christians out there and any other person that God's grace is very sufficient in our lives. And God is sending help in different ways. And it doesn't mean that you're a different person for you to be given that child who is autistic or that relative who is autistic. But God is going to give you strength to be able to carry on. And everything that we are also mentioning here today is that would love you to be able to reach out. Linus, and everything that we're encouraging our parents, our sisters, our brothers and brethren in Christ is that there is help out there. Yeah. It's only maybe they do not have this information. And this is why we are bringing this topic to the church platform. It's not only about autism, but we will also be able to unpack a number of issues that relate to mental health and disorders. But we are also telling people that it's good for us to be able to reach out and get that help. We mentioned again earlier on issues to do that Christ encouraged people to be able to be very active. Like pick your net and do what? Go and fish. So for this to come out, you also have to be very active. You also have to be knowledgeable. So let's not just sit down and believe that it's going to happen miraculously, but it's for us to take a step forward and reach out. And it's also for us as a profession to also be able to know how do we relate these issues when we go out there and speak to people who are in our churches, because I feel like sometimes we take a different message. But you as Linus, as you go to the churches and maybe you're speaking about, or even you're speaking to your patients about this, how do you direct the issue of faith so that we are also able to guide them in a correct way? And this has been Connect for us today. So happy once again to host Linus today. And to our viewers, thank you so much for reaching out. You can please continue to reach out to us using our email address below in the screen, and we will be very happy to help you through this journey, and also to pray with you, and also to be able to refer you in case you need help. Thank you so much.